The baby's screams tore through the empty ranch like something dying. Elena Mercer stood in the doorway, exhausted and half-starved, staring at the wreckage of what used to be a family. The widower couldn't stop his infant daughter from crying. His older child watched from the shadows with eyes that had already given up. And Elena knew, right then, in that frozen moment, that if she walked through that door, her running would finally be over, one way or another. If you want to know whether a broken woman and a shattered family can rebuild each other on the loneliest edge of the frontier, stay with me until the end. And when you do, hit that like button and drop a comment with the city you're watching from. I want to see just how far this story travels. The wind across the Wyoming plains didn't just blow, it carved. It stripped paint from buildings, bent fence posts until they snapped, and turned human skin raw in under an hour. Elena Mercer had been walking through it for 3 days straight. Her boots were split along the seams. Her dress hung in tatters beneath a man's coat she'd traded for 2 weeks ago, back when she still had something worth trading. The canteen at her hip had been empty since yesterday morning. She'd passed 2 ranches already, knocked on both doors, asked politely for water and maybe a corner of a barn to sleep in for one night. Both times, the answer was the same. "We don't take in drifters. You'll have to move along." She didn't argue. She'd never argued anymore. Arguing required energy she no longer had. So when she saw the third ranch, a sagging collection of weather-beaten structures clustered around a main house with a crooked porch, she almost kept walking. Almost. But then she heard the crying. Not the normal fussing of a baby. This was different, desperate. The kind of sound that meant something was very wrong and nobody knew how to fix it. Elena stopped in the middle of the dirt road 50 yards from the house. She should keep moving. She should leave well enough alone. Every instinct she'd developed over the last 2 years screamed at her to turn around and find somewhere else. Anywhere else. But the crying didn't stop. She closed her eyes, took a breath that tasted like dust and failure, and walked toward the house. The porch steps creaked under her weight. The door was half open, like someone had run outside in a hurry and forgotten to close it. Through the gap, she could see the chaos inside. A table covered in dirty dishes, a basket of laundry overturned on the floor, a pan on the stove with something burnt black inside it, and in the center of it all, a man pacing back and forth with a screaming baby in his arms. He looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. His shirt was buttoned wrong. His hair stood up in every direction. His eyes had the glassy, desperate look of someone who'd run out of answers days ago and was now just surviving on fumes. "Please," he muttered to the baby, his voice hoarse. "Please, Clara, just stop, just for a minute." The baby screamed louder. Elena knocked on the doorframe. The man spun around so fast he nearly dropped the child. His hand went instinctively to his hip, where a gun probably used to sit, but there was nothing there now. Just an empty belt and a man too tired to be dangerous. "Who the hell are you?" he said. "Nobody," Elena said quietly. "I was passing through. Heard the baby. Thought maybe you could use some help." "I don't need help." "You sure about that?" For a moment, he just stared at her. Then the baby let out another ear-splitting wail, and something in his face cracked. "I don't have money to pay you," he said flatly. "Didn't ask for money. Just water, if you can spare it. And maybe I could sit down for 5 minutes before I fall over." He looked at her for a long time. She could see him weighing it, stranger versus desperation, suspicion versus exhaustion. Finally, he stepped aside. 5 minutes, he said. Elena walked into this house and closed the door behind her. The baby kept screaming. The man kept pacing. And somewhere in the back of the house, Elena heard another sound, quiet, deliberate footsteps. Someone else was watching. She moved slowly, keeping her hands where he could see them. "What's her name?" "Clara." He said it like he'd been repeating it for hours. "She won't stop. I've tried everything. She's fed, she's dry, I've walked her, rocked her, sang to her. Nothing works." "How long's she been crying?" 2 hours, maybe 3. I lost track. Elena stepped closer, holding out her hands. "May I?" He hesitated. Then with a look of pure desperation, he handed the baby over. Clara was tiny, maybe 4 months old, red-faced and furious. The moment Elena took her, she adjusted the baby's position, tilting her slightly upward and pressing her gently against her shoulder. She started swaying, slow and rhythmic, and began humming something low and tuneless. The baby's screams started to fade, not all at once, but little by little the wails turned to whimpers, and the whimpers turned to hiccups, and finally, blessedly, silence. The man stared like he'd just witnessed a miracle. How did you— She had gas, Elena said simply. You were holding her too flat. She needed to be upright. He blinked. That's it? That's it. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Clara made a small, satisfied sound and nestled into Elena's shoulder. The house settled into a quiet so complete it felt unnatural. Then a voice came from the hallway. Papa? Elena turned. A little girl stood in the doorway, maybe 6 years old, with tangled blonde hair and a dress that hadn't been washed in days. She was staring at Elena with the kind of suspicion only children can manage. It's all right, Maggie, the man said. I'm sorry, I didn't get your name. Elena. I'm Cole Brennan. This is my daughter Maggie. And the one you just performed a miracle on is Clara. Elena shifted the baby carefully. Nice to meet you both. Maggie didn't move. Are you staying? No, Elena said quickly. Just passing through. That's what they all say. Cole frowned. Maggie, it's true. Miss Holloway said she'd stay and help. Then she left. And Mrs. Patterson said she'd come back, but she didn't. Maggie, that's enough. But the girl's eyes never left Elena. Nobody stays. The words hung in the air like an accusation. Elena didn't know what to say to that. She didn't know how to explain that the girl was probably right, that she was just another person passing through, that staying was never part of the plan. So instead, she said nothing. Cole cleared his throat. You said you needed water. If you can spare it, I can. He gestured toward the kitchen. And if you're hungry, there's not much, but you're welcome to it. Elena handed Clara back to him, gently, so the baby wouldn't wake, and moved toward the kitchen. The stove was still warm, the burnt pan still sitting on top of it. She picked it up, looked inside, and grimaced. When's the last time you ate something that wasn't charcoal? Cole didn't answer. Elena set the pan aside and started opening cupboards. There wasn't much. Some flour, a bit of salt, half a jar of preserves, a few potatoes that were more sprout than vegetable. But she'd worked with less. You mind if I use your stove? Cole just stared at her. You're going to cook? Unless you want to eat burnt mush for dinner? He didn't argue. He just sank into a chair at the table, Clara still asleep against his chest, and watched as Elena got to work. She peeled the potatoes, diced them small, and started frying them in the last bit of bacon grease she found in a jar by the stove. She mixed flour and water into a rough dough, rolled it flat, and cut it into strips for noodles. She opened the preserves and tasted them, apple, and still good, and used a spoonful to sweeten a pot of weak tea. It wasn't fancy, it wasn't even particularly good, but it was hot and it was edible, and when she set a plate in front of Cole 20 minutes later, he looked at it like she'd just handed him gold. I don't know what to say, he said quietly. Don't say anything, just eat. He did, and for the first time since Elena had walked into this broken house, he looked like a human being instead of a ghost. Maggie crept into this kitchen, eyeing the food with the same suspicion she'd aimed at Elena earlier. But hunger won out. She climbed into a chair and started eating without a word. Elena poured herself a cup of tea and leaned against the counter, watching them. The baby slept. The man ate. The little girl didn't look at her, and Elena thought for just a moment that maybe this was what a family looked like when it was trying not to fall apart. You can stay the night if you want, Cole said suddenly. It's not safe to travel after dark. There's a room upstairs. It's not much, but it's got a bed. Elena hesitated. I don't want to impose. You just saved my sanity and fed my kids. I think I owe you a bed. She wanted to say no. She wanted to walk out the door right now before this got complicated, before she started to care. But she was so tired, and the wind outside was picking up again, and the thought of sleeping on hard ground one more night made her bones ache. Just one night, she said. Cole nodded. Just one night. But Maggie looked up from her plate, and her eyes said something different. Nobody stays. Elena woke before dawn. The house was still quiet, the kind of silence that only existed in the hours before the world remembered it had work to do. She lay in the narrow bed for a moment, staring at the ceiling, and tried to remember the last time she'd slept under a roof. It had been weeks, maybe a month. She sat up slowly, testing her body for pain. Her feet were blistered, her shoulders sore from carrying her pack, her hands rough and cracked. But she was alive. That counted for something. She dressed quickly and made her way downstairs. The kitchen was empty, the stove cold. She got to work anyway. By the time Cole came downstairs with Clara on his hip, the stove was lit, coffee was brewing, and Elena was frying eggs she'd found in a basket on the back porch. He stopped in the doorway and just stared. "You didn't have to do this," he said. "I was awake. Figured I might as well make myself useful." He sat down at the table, and she set a plate in front of him. He ate slowly, like he was afraid it might disappear if he moved too fast. "Where are you headed?" he asked after a while. Elena poured herself a cup of coffee. "Don't know yet. Wherever the road takes me." "You got family somewhere?" "No." "Friends?" "No." He frowned. "So you're just wandering?" Something like that. He didn't push. He just finished his eggs and watched Clara gum her fist, her eyes wide and curious. "You're good with kids. I've been around them before." "You have your own?" The question hit harder than it should have. Elena kept her face neutral. "No. But you wanted them." She didn't answer that. She didn't owe him her story. Cole seemed to sense he'd crossed a line. He changed the subject. "The ranch is falling apart. I can't keep up with it. Not alone. What happened to your wife?" His jaw tightened. "She died. 8 months ago. Fever took her in less than a week." Elena's chest tightened. "I'm sorry." "Everyone's sorry." He said it without bitterness, just exhaustion. "But sorry doesn't fix the roof or mend the fences or keep the cattle from wandering off." "You don't have help? No hired hands?" "Can't afford them. You used to have a foreman, but he left after Sarah died. Said the place wasn't worth saving." Cole looked around the kitchen, at the cracked walls and the warped floorboards. Maybe he was right. Elena set her coffee down. "You don't believe that." "I don't know what I believe anymore." Before she could respond, Maggie appeared in the doorway. She was wearing the same dress as yesterday, and her hair was a mess of knots. She looked at Elena with the same wary expression. "Morning," Elena said. Maggie didn't answer. She just climbed into her chair and waited. Elena made her a plate. Eggs, a bit of bread toasted over the stove, a cup of milk from the icebox. Maggie ate in silence, her eyes flicking between Elena and her father. Finally, she spoke. "Are you leaving today?" Elena opened her mouth to say yes. That was the plan. One night, and then back on the road. But then she looked around the kitchen. At the dishes piled in the sink, the floor that hadn't been swept in weeks, the laundry basket still overturned in the corner, and she thought about Cole, trying to hold this place together with nothing but willpower and desperation. She thought about Maggie, who'd already learned that people don't stay. She thought about Clara, who deserved better than a father too exhausted to care for her properly. "I could stay a few more days," she heard herself say, "if you need the help." Cole's head snapped up. "I can't pay you. I don't need pay, just a roof and a meal." "Why would you do that?" Elena didn't have a good answer. She didn't know why she was offering. It went against everything she'd learned in the last 2 years. Don't get attached. Don't stay too long. Don't let anyone need you. But maybe she was just tired of running. "Because you need it," she said simply. "And I'm here." Cole looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "A few days," he said. "A few days?" she agreed. Maggie's eyes narrowed. "You'll leave after that?" "Probably. Everyone does." Elena didn't argue. She just started clearing the dishes. The first day, Elena focused on the house. She swept the floors, washed the dishes, and tackled the mountain of laundry that had been growing for weeks. She scrubbed the stove until it gleamed, mended a tear in one of Maggie's dresses, and hung fresh curtains in the kitchen. Cole watched her work with a mixture of gratitude and confusion, like he couldn't quite believe she was real. The second day she started on the smaller repairs. A loose board on the porch, a door that wouldn't latch properly, a window that rattled in the wind. Cole tried to help, but he was so overwhelmed by the ranch work that he barely had time to breathe. So Elena just worked quietly, fixing what she could, and didn't ask for anything in return. By the third day, the house looked almost livable again. Maggie still didn't trust her. The girl followed her around the house, watching everything she did with suspicious eyes. She didn't talk much, but she didn't leave either. Elena didn't push. She just kept working. On the fourth day, Maggie finally spoke. "Why are you doing this?" Elena was mending a hole in a blanket. She didn't look up. "Doing what?" "Fixing everything. You said you were leaving." "I will leave, eventually." "So why fix things if you're just going to go?" Elena set the blanket down and looked at the girl. "Because they need fixing, and I can fix them. That's enough." Maggie frowned. "That doesn't make sense." "Maybe not, but it's the truth." The girl chewed her lip, thinking. Then she climbed into the chair across from Elena and picked up a piece of fabric. "Can you teach me how to sew?" Elena blinked. "You want to learn?" "Mama used to sew. I don't remember how." Something in Elena's chest cracked. She handed Maggie a needle and thread. "All right, I'll teach you." They worked in silence for a while, Elena guiding Maggie's small hands through the stitches. The girl was clumsy at first, but she was determined. She didn't give up. "You're good at this," Elena said after a while. Maggie shrugged. "Mama said I had good hands." She was right. Maggie glanced up at her, and for the first time her expression softened. Just a little. "Do you miss your mama?" Elena asked gently. Maggie nodded. "Every day?" "I'm sure she misses you too." "She's dead. She can't miss anyone." Elena's throat tightened. "Maybe, but I think if she could see you now, she'd be proud of you." Maggie didn't respond. She just kept sewing. That night, after the children were asleep, Cole found Elena sitting on the porch. She was staring out at the dark prairie, her arms wrapped around herself against the cold. "You all right?" he asked. "Fine." He sat down beside her. "You don't have to stay, you know. If you want to leave, I won't stop you." "I know." "So why are you still here?" Elena didn't answer right away. She didn't know how to explain it. The truth was, she didn't fully understand it herself. Finally, she said, "I guess I'm tired of running." Cole nodded slowly. "I know the feeling." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the wind. "Maggie's warming up to you," Cole said eventually. "Maybe. She doesn't warm up to people easily, not anymore." "Can't blame her." "No." He paused. "But it's good, for her to have someone besides me." Elena looked at him. "You're doing fine." "I'm barely holding on. That's still more than most people manage." He smiled, just a little. "You always this stubborn?" "Usually worse." He laughed. A real laugh, the first she'd heard from him. It changed his whole face, made him look younger, less haunted. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for staying, even if it's just for a few days." "You're welcome." They sat together until the cold drove them inside. And when Elena climbed into bed that night, she realized something. For the first time in 2 years, she didn't want to leave. The next morning, everything changed. Elena was in the kitchen making breakfast when she heard the sound of hooves outside. She looked through the window and saw a man dismounting from a large black horse. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed like someone who had money. His hat was clean, his boots polished. He moved with the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. Elena's stomach dropped. She knew that walk. She knew that face. She'd hoped she'd never see him again. Cole came down the stairs and saw the man through the window. His expression shifted, surprise, then something guarded. "That's my brother," he said. "Wade." Elena's hands went cold. Wade Brennan. Of course. Of course he was Cole's brother. Cole opened the door and Wade walked in like he owned the place. His eyes swept the room, taking in the clean floor, the fresh curtains, the smell of coffee and bacon. Then his gaze landed on Elena. He froze. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Wade's expression darkened. "What the hell is she doing here?" he said. Cole frowned. "You know her?" Wade's jaw tightened. "Yeah, I know her." Elena's heart was pounding. She forced herself to stay calm. "Hello, Wade." "Don't," Wade said sharply. "Don't pretend like this is some kind of friendly reunion." Cole looked between them, confusion and suspicion warring on his face. "What's going on?" Wade pointed at Elena. That woman is a liar and a fraud, and if you have any... She didn't defend herself. She didn't argue, because deep down, she knew he was right. Maggie appeared in the doorway, her eyes wide. Papa? Cole's hand went to his daughter's shoulder. Go upstairs, Maggie. But now. Maggie hesitated, then ran upstairs. The sound of her footsteps faded, leaving only silence. Cole turned to Wade. Start talking. Wade's eyes never left Elena. Her real name is Elena Hartley. 5 years ago, she worked for a family in Cheyenne. Rich family. They trusted her. And she robbed them blind and disappeared in the middle of the night. Elena's hands trembled. She gripped the edge of the counter to steady herself. That's not what happened, she said quietly. Isn't it? Wade's voice was cold. You took their money and ran, left them with nothing. I didn't take anything that wasn't owed to me. You're a thief. I'm a survivor. Wade stepped closer. You need to leave, right now, before you destroy this family the way you destroyed the last one. Cole held up a hand. Wade, she's dangerous, Cole. You don't know what she's capable of. Elena finally looked at Cole. His face was unreadable. Is it true? He asked. Elena swallowed hard. It's more complicated than that. Did you take their money? Yes. His expression didn't change, but something in his eyes shifted. Why? Because they owed me 6 months of wages, and when I asked for it, they called me a liar and threw me out. So I took what was mine and left. That's not your decision to make, Wade said. It was when I had no other choice. Wade turned to Cole. You see? She'll justify anything. She'll take what she wants and leave you with nothing, just like she did to them, just like she'll do to you. Cole didn't respond. He just stood there, staring at Elena, and Elena realized in that moment that she'd lost him. She'd known this would happen eventually. She'd known her past would catch up with her. She'd just hoped it would take longer. I'll pack my things, she said quietly. She turned and walked toward the stairs. Behind her, she heard Wade say, "Smart choice." And she heard Cole say nothing at all. Elena's hand shook as she folded the spare dress Cole had given her 3 days ago. It still smelled like lye soap and sunshine. She placed it carefully in her pack, along with the half loaf of bread she'd baked that morning and a canteen Cole had told her to keep. Her fingers lingered on the fabric for a moment before she forced herself to let go. Upstairs, she could hear Maggie crying. The sound cut through the floorboards like a knife. I don't want her to leave, the girl sobbed. Papa, please. Elena couldn't hear Cole's response. She didn't want to. She just kept packing, moving mechanically, trying not to think about the look on his face when Wade had called her a thief. Because that's what she was, wasn't she? No matter how she justified it. No matter how many times she told herself she'd only taken what was owed. The truth was simpler and uglier than that. She'd stolen. And she'd run. And now she was paying for it. She was almost finished when she heard footsteps on the stairs. Heavy ones. Cole. He appeared in the doorway, his face unreadable. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. You don't have to go, he said finally. Elena looked up, surprised. Your brother? My brother doesn't run this ranch. I do. He's right about me, Cole. I'm not who you thought I was. You're exactly who I thought you were. He stepped into the room. A woman who showed up here with nothing, who worked harder than anyone I've ever met, who calmed my baby when I couldn't, who taught my daughter how to sew, who made this house feel like a home again. Elena's throat tightened. You don't know the whole story. Then tell me. She turned away, staring out the window at the endless prairie. The family Wade mentioned, the Harringtons. I worked for them for 2 years, cooking, cleaning, taking care of their children. They promised me wages every month, but they kept putting it off. Next week, they'd say. Next month. After 6 months of nothing, I asked for what they owed me. Mrs. Harrington called me ungrateful, said I should be happy just to have a roof over my head. Mr. Harrington said if I didn't like it, I could leave. Cole waited, saying nothing. So I left, Elena continued. But before I did, I went into his office and took exactly what he owed me from the cash box. Not a penny more. And I walked out that door and never looked back. And Wade knows this how? Elena's jaw tightened. Because he was there that night, at the Harrington house. He and Mr. Harrington were business partners. He saw me leave, And when they discovered the money was gone, he told everyone I was a thief. Cole absorbed this silently. Did you ever try to explain? To who? The Harringtons had money and connections. I had nothing. Who was going to believe me? I would have. The words landed between them, quiet and certain. Elena turned to look at him. You don't mean that, she said. Yes, I do. You don't even know me. I know enough. Elena shook her head. You know what you've seen for 5 days. That's not enough to judge someone's character. It is for me. Cole crossed his arms. I've had plenty of people pass through here since Sarah died. Neighbors, church folk, people who said they wanted to help. You know what they did? They brought casseroles and sympathy, and then they left, every single one of them. But you? He gestured around the room. You stayed. You worked. You didn't ask for anything in return. That tells me more about your character than anything Wade says. Elena wanted to believe him. She wanted it so badly it hurt. But she'd learned the hard way that believing people was dangerous. Your brother won't let this go, she said quietly. Then he'll have to learn to live with disappointment. Before Elena could respond, Wade's voice echoed up from downstairs. Cole, we need to talk. Now. Cole's expression hardened. Stay here. Cole, please, just stay. He left before she could argue. Elena listened to his footsteps descend the stairs, then moved to the top of the landing where she could hear without being seen. Wade was pacing in the kitchen. She could hear his boots hitting the floor hard and angry. You're making a mistake, Wade said. That's my decision to make. She's a criminal, Cole. She stole from the Harringtons. She took wages they owed her. That's what she told you. You don't know it's true. And you don't know it's not. Wade stopped pacing. I was there. I know exactly what happened. Then tell me. The whole story, not just your version. There was a pause. When Wade spoke again, his voice was quieter, more careful. The Harringtons were good people. They gave her a job when no one else would, and she repaid them by stealing. If they were such good people, why didn't they pay her? Wade didn't answer that. Cole pressed on. You were their business partner. You would have known if they were holding back wages. So either you knew and did nothing, or you're lying to me now. Which is it? That's not fair. Isn't it? Cole's voice was steady, but Elena could hear the anger underneath. You show up here after 8 months of nothing, no visits, no letters, no help, and you think you can tell me how to run my life? I'm trying to protect you. From what? A woman who's done nothing but help me. From making the same mistake I did. The words hung in the air. Elena's breath caught. Cole's voice dropped. What are you talking about? Wade was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. I trusted her too, 5 years ago, before the Harringtons. I met her in Cheyenne. She was working at a boarding house. We talked. She was smart, funny. I thought... He trailed off. I thought maybe she was someone I could build a life with. Elena closed her eyes. She remembered. She remembered Wade Brennan showing up at the boarding house every week, buying her dinners she couldn't afford, making promises he had no intention of keeping. I helped her get the job with the Harringtons, Wade continued, vouched for her, put my reputation on the line. And when she stole from them, it made me look like a fool, cost me my partnership, cost me everything I'd built. So this is about your pride, Cole said flatly. It's about her pattern. She uses people, gets what she needs and moves on. That's what she's doing to you right now. She's been here less than a week. And in that week, has she told you where she came from, where she's going, anything about her past? Cole didn't answer. Exactly, Wade said. Because she's hiding something, and when you finally figure out what it is, she'll be gone, just like before. Upstairs, Elena gripped the railing so hard her knuckles went white. Wade wasn't entirely wrong. She had been hiding. She'd been hiding for 2 years, moving from town to town, never staying long enough for anyone to ask questions. But this was different, wasn't it? I want you to leave, Cole said suddenly. Cole? Not her. You. Get out of my house, Wade's voice turned cold. You're choosing her over your own brother? I'm choosing to trust my own judgment, something you clearly can't do. You'll regret this. Maybe, but it'll be my regret to live with. There was a long silence. Then Elena heard the front door slam. Through the window, she saw Wade mount his horse and ride away without looking back. She waited until the dust settled before she went downstairs. Cole was standing at the kitchen window, his hands braced against the counter. He didn't turn when she entered. "You didn't have to do that," Elena said quietly. "Yes, I did. He's your brother. And he's wrong." Cole finally turned to face her. His eyes were tired but determined. "He's wrong about you." "You don't know that." "Yes, I do." Elena wanted to argue. She wanted to tell him all the reasons he was making a mistake, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she said, "What he said about Cheyenne, about us, that part was true." Cole's expression didn't change. "Did you care about him?" "I thought I did, for a while." "What changed?" Elena looked away. "I realized he didn't see me. He saw someone he could fix, someone he could save, and when I didn't need saving the way he wanted, he moved on." "And the Harringtons?" "He got me that job because it made him look good, not because he wanted to help me. And when things went wrong, he protected his reputation instead of telling the truth." Cole nodded slowly. "That sounds like Wade." "You believe me?" "I believe you." He said it simply, like it was the easiest thing in the world. Elena's chest tightened. "Why?" "Because I've spent the last 5 days watching you, and everything you've done, every choice you've made, has been about helping other people, even when you had nothing to gain from it." He paused. "That's not the behavior of someone who uses people." "Maybe I'm just better at hiding it than you think. Or maybe you're just scared to trust anyone, including yourself." The words hit harder than Elena expected. She turned away, blinking back tears she refused to let fall. "I should still go," she said. "Why?" "Because staying will just make this harder, for both of us." "Harder than what? Watching you walk away when there's no reason for it?" "There's every reason for it." Elena's voice cracked. "I don't belong here, Cole. I don't belong anywhere." "You belong here if you want to." "It's not that simple." "It is exactly that simple." Elena shook her head. "You don't understand. Every place I've stayed, every person I've trusted, it always ends the same way. They realize I'm not worth the trouble. They realize I'm broken, and they let me go." Cole crossed the kitchen in 3 strides. He didn't touch her, but he stood close enough that she could feel the heat of him. "You're not broken," he said quietly. "You're surviving. There's a difference." "You don't know what I've done." "I don't care." "You should, but I don't." His voice was firm. "Whatever happened before you got here, that's not my business. What matters is what happens now. And right now, I'm asking you to stay. Not because I need a housekeeper or someone to watch my kids, but because I want you here." Elena looked up at him, searching his face for any sign of doubt. There was none. "Why?" she whispered. "Because when you're here, this place feels alive again. Because Maggie smiled yesterday for the first time in months. Because Clara sleeps through the night when you rock her. Because I don't feel like I'm drowning anymore." He paused. "And because I think maybe you don't feel like you're drowning either." Elena's breath caught. He was right. She hadn't realized it until now, but he was right. For the first time in 2 years, she felt like she could breathe. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted. "Do what?" "Stay." "I don't know how to stay." Cole's expression softened. "Then learn. We'll figure it out together." Before Elena could respond, Maggie appeared in the doorway. Her eyes were red from crying, and she was clutching a small cloth doll that looked like it had been sewn back together a dozen times. "Are you leaving?" she asked Elena. Elena looked at Cole, then back at Maggie. "No," she said. "I'm not leaving." Maggie's face crumpled. She ran across the kitchen and threw her arms around Elena's waist, sobbing into her dress. Elena stood frozen for a moment, unsure what to do. Then, slowly, she wrapped her arms around the little girl and held on. "I thought you were gone," Maggie cried. "I thought you left like everyone else." "I'm here," Elena said softly. "I'm right here." Maggie pulled back just enough to look up at her. "Promise?" Elena hesitated. She'd learned not to make promises she couldn't keep. But looking down at this little girl, this fierce, broken little girl who'd already lost so much, she couldn't bring herself to say no. "I promise," she said. Maggie buried her face in Elena's dress again. And over the girl's head, Elena met Cole's eyes. He was smiling, not a big smile, just a small, grateful curve of his mouth that made something in Elena's chest ache. This was dangerous, she thought, this feeling, this hope. But maybe, just this once, it was worth the risk. The next few days passed in a rhythm that felt almost normal. Elena woke early, started the fire, made breakfast. Cole worked the ranch, fixing fences and tending cattle that were too thin from a hard winter. Maggie followed Elena around like a shadow, learning how to knead bread and mend clothes and all the small skills that kept a household running. And Clara, sweet, easy Clara, grew plumper and happier by the day. It should have been peaceful. It should have been simple. But Elena couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. She saw it in the way Cole's jaw tightened whenever he looked toward the main road. She heard it in the silence that fell over dinner when no one knew what to say. She felt it in the way Maggie sometimes watched her, like she was waiting for Elena to disappear. On the fifth night, after the children were asleep, Elena found Cole sitting on the porch again. He was staring out at the dark prairie, a bottle of whiskey dangling from one hand. She sat down beside him without asking. "You drinking that or just holding it?" she said. He glanced at the bottle like he'd forgotten it was there. "Haven't decided yet." "When did you start drinking alone?" "When my wife died and my brother stopped visiting." Elena took the bottle from his hand and set it on the porch rail. "Talk to me." Cole sighed. "Wade came back today." Elena's stomach dropped. "What did he say?" "That I'm a fool, that you'll destroy this family, that I'm dishonoring Sarah's memory by letting you stay." He rubbed his face. "Same thing he's been saying for days, just louder." "Maybe he's right." "He's not." "You don't know that." Cole turned to look at her. "Do you want to leave?" "No." "Then stop trying to convince me you should." Elena pulled her knees to her chest. "I'm just trying to be realistic. Your brother isn't going to let this go. And the longer I stay, the worse it's going to get. Let me worry about Wade." "That's not fair to you." "Life isn't fair, Elena. You know that better than anyone." He reached for the bottle again, then stopped himself. "Sarah used to say that the only thing worse than making a mistake was letting fear stop you from trying. I didn't understand what she meant until after she was gone." "What do you mean?" "I mean, I spent so much time being afraid of losing her, afraid of failing, afraid of not being good enough, that I forgot to just live. And then she died. And I realized I'd wasted all that time being scared of something I couldn't control anyway." Elena's throat tightened. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. Just don't make the same mistake I did." He looked at her. "Don't let fear make your decisions for you." "What if fear is the only thing keeping me alive? Then you're not living, you're just surviving, and that's not enough." The words settled over them like snow. Elena wanted to argue. She wanted to tell him he was wrong, that survival was all anyone could ask for. But deep down, she knew he was right. She'd been surviving for so long, she'd forgotten what living felt like. "I'm scared," she admitted quietly. "Of what?" "Of staying, of caring, of losing this." Cole reached over and took her hand. His palm was rough and warm, calloused from years of hard work. "I'm scared too," he said. "But I'd rather be scared and alive than safe and empty." Elena looked down at their joined hands. She couldn't remember the last time someone had touched her like this. Not with need or expectation, just with warmth. "Your brother won't stop," she said. "I know." "He'll keep pushing until you choose." "I already chose." Elena met his eyes. "What if choosing me means losing him?" Cole's jaw tightened. "Then that's his choice, not mine." They sat in silence for a while, hands still linked, watching the stars appear one by one over the prairie. Finally, Elena said, "Thank you." "For what?" "For seeing me. The real me. Not the person Wade says I am." Cole squeezed her hand. "The real you is the only one I want to see." Something shifted between them in that moment, something fragile and new and terrifying. Elena pulled her hand away gently and stood up. "I should get some sleep." "Elena, good night, Cole." She went inside before he could say anything else, before she could let herself hope for something more than just a place to stay. But that night, lying in the narrow bed upstairs, She couldn't stop thinking about the way his hand had felt in hers, and she couldn't stop wondering what it would be like to let herself stay, not just for a few days or weeks, but for good. The next morning, everything shattered. Elena was in the kitchen making breakfast when she heard horses outside. Not just one, several. She looked through the window and saw Wade riding up with 3 other men. They were all armed. Cole was already outside, his body tense. Elena grabbed a shawl and stepped onto the porch, her heart pounding. Wade dismounted and gestured to the men with him. "This is Sheriff Dawson, and these are his deputies." The sheriff was a tall man with a gray beard and eyes that had seen too much. He tipped his hat to Elena, then turned to Cole. "Mr. Brennan," he said, "I'm here about a woman named Elena Hartley. Your brother says she's staying here." Cole's expression went cold. "What's this about, Wade?" "I filed a complaint," Wade said, "on behalf of the Harrington family, for theft." Elena's blood turned to ice. The sheriff looked uncomfortable. "Miss Hartley, I need to ask you some questions." "She doesn't have to answer anything," Cole said sharply. "Actually, sir, she does. If she refuses, I'll have to take her in." Elena stepped forward, her chin up. "It's all right, Cole." "Elena, it's all right." She looked at the sheriff. "What do you want to know?" "Did you work for the Harrington family in Cheyenne 5 years ago?" "Yes." "And did you take money from their home without permission?" Elena's jaw tightened. "I took wages they owed me. They refused to pay, so I took what was mine." "That's not what the complaint says. The complaint is a lie." Wade stepped forward. "She's a thief, Sheriff. She admitted it. Arrest her." The sheriff held up a hand. "Mr. Brennan, I'll handle this." "She stole from my business partners. That makes it my concern." "It makes it a civil matter, not a criminal one." The sheriff turned back to Elena. "Miss Hartley, do you have any proof of the wages owed?" "No, they never gave me a contract." "Then it's your word against theirs. And theirs is worth more because they have money." The sheriff's expression softened. "I'm sorry, miss, but without proof, there's nothing I can do." "So she gets away with it?" Wade demanded. "There's no crime here, Mr. Brennan, just a dispute over wages." The sheriff tipped his hat again. "Miss Hartley, I'd suggest you settle this directly with the Harringtons if you want it resolved." "She can't settle it," Wade said, "because she's a criminal." "No, she's not." Cole stepped between them. "And if you keep harassing her, I'll file a complaint against you." Wade's eyes narrowed. "You'd choose her over your own family." "You're not acting like family. You're acting like a bully." "I'm trying to protect you." "I don't need your protection. I need you to leave now." Wade stared at him for a long moment. Then he turned to the sheriff. "You're making a mistake." "I'm following the law." The sheriff nodded to Cole. "Sorry for the trouble, Mr. Brennan." He and his deputies rode away. Wade stayed behind, his face dark with anger. "This isn't over," he said. "Yes, it is," Cole replied. Wade's jaw worked. Then, without another word, he mounted his horse and rode off. Elena stood on the porch, shaking. She felt Cole's hand on her shoulder. "You all right?" he asked. "No. He can't do anything. The sheriff said so." "He'll find another way." Elena turned to face him. "You should let me go, Cole, before this gets worse." "No. He's your brother, and he's wrong." Cole's voice was steady. "I'm not letting you go. Not now. Not ever." Elena looked up at him and saw something in his eyes that made her chest ache. He meant it, and that terrified her more than anything Wade could do. Elena spent the rest of that day trying to act normal. She cooked lunch, swept the floors, played with Maggie in the afternoon sun. But her hands shook every time she picked something up, and she kept glancing toward the road like Wade might come back with an entire regiment. Cole noticed. He didn't say anything, just stayed closer than usual, working on the fence near the house instead of the far pasture, checking in every hour or so with some thin excuse about needing water or tools. By evening, Elena's nerves were worn to nothing. She was washing dishes when Maggie tugged on her sleeve. "Are you going to leave because of Uncle Wade?" the girl asked. Elena's chest tightened. "I don't know, sweetheart. I don't want you to go." "I know. Then don't." Maggie said it like it was the simplest thing in the world, like wanting something was the same as having it. Elena knelt down so she was eye level with the girl. "Sometimes people have to leave even when they don't want to, not because they want to hurt anyone, just because staying would hurt more. I don't understand. I know you don't, and I hope you never have to. Maggie's lower lip trembled. Mama didn't want to leave either, but she did anyway. The words landed like a punch. Elena pulled the girl into her arms and held her tight. Your mama would have stayed if she could, Elena whispered. She loved you so much. You know that, right? Maggie nodded against her shoulder. Papa says she's watching over us. But I can't see her. I can't hear her. So how do I know she's really there? Elena didn't have an answer for that. She didn't believe in watching over anyone from beyond. She'd seen too much loss to think death was anything but final. But she couldn't tell a 6-year-old that. Maybe she's there in the things she taught you, Elena said carefully. In the way you help with your sister. In the way you remember her. Is that enough? I don't know, but it's something. Maggie pulled back and wiped her eyes. If you leave, will I remember you? Yes. Will you remember me? Elena's throat closed up. Every day. Maggie studied her face for a long moment. Then she said, Uncle Wade is mean. Don't let him make you go. It's not that simple, sweetheart. Yes, it is. Papa wants you to stay. I want you to stay. Even Clara likes you, and she cries at everyone. Maggie crossed her arms. So you should stay. Elena almost smiled. Almost. You're very bossy, you know that? Mama said it's called having opinions. Your mama was right. Maggie nodded, satisfied. Then she wandered off to play with her doll, leaving Elena alone with a chest full of feelings she didn't know what to do with. That night, the wind picked up. Not the usual prairie breeze that rattled the windows and whispered through the grass. This was different. Heavier. Angrier. Elena stood on the porch after dinner, watching the sky darken in the west. The clouds rolled in low and fast, swallowing the stars. Cole came out and stood beside her. Storm's coming. How bad? Hard to say. Could blow over. Could settle in for days. He glanced at her. You ever been through a prairie storm? Not like this. They're not gentle. When they hit hard. Elena pulled her shawl tighter. How long do we have? Few hours, maybe. I need to get the livestock closer to the barn. Secure anything that might blow away. He paused. I could use help. What do you need me to do? Stay with the kids. If the storm gets bad, take them to the cellar. There's lanterns down there, blankets, water, everything you'll need. Elena's stomach twisted. You're not coming with us? I'll be right behind you. I just need to make sure the animals are safe first. Cole? I'll be fine. I've done this 100 times. But something in his voice told her he was worried too. They worked quickly. Cole brought the horses into the barn and penned the cattle in the near pasture. Elena gathered candles, matches, extra blankets. She filled a basin with water and set it in the cellar, along with enough food to last a few days if they needed it. Maggie watched all the preparations with wide eyes. Is it going to be bad? I don't know, Elena said honestly, but we're going to be ready just in case. I'm scared. That's okay. Being scared just means you're smart. Maggie climbed into her lap. Will Papa be okay? Yes, your Papa is very strong. Mama was strong too, but she still died. Elena held her tighter. Your Papa isn't going anywhere. She hoped that was true. By nightfall, the wind was howling. It rattled the shutters and tore at the roof shingles. Rain started coming down in sheets, so thick Elena couldn't see past the porch. Cole came in soaked to the bone, his hair plastered to his forehead. It's getting worse. We need to go to the cellar. Now. Now! Elena scooped up Clara, who'd been fussing for the last hour, and grabbed the bag of supplies. Maggie clung to her father's hand as they made their way outside. The wind almost knocked Elena off her feet. Rain lashed at her face, cold and stinging. She could barely see the cellar door 10 feet away. Cole got there first and hauled it open. Get inside! Elena climbed down the ladder, Clara wailing in her arms. Maggie followed, then Cole. He pulled the door shut behind them, and the roar of the storm became muffled. The cellar was small and dark, barely big enough for the 4 of them. Elena lit a lantern and hung it from a hook on the ceiling. The light flickered, casting strange shadows on the dirt walls. Maggie huddled close to her father. How long do we have to stay down here? Until the storm passes, Cole said. What if it doesn't pass? It will. But his voice was tight. He was worried. Elena could see it in the set of his shoulders, the way his jaw kept clenching. Clara screamed louder, her little face bright red. Elena tried rocking her, humming, everything that usually worked. Nothing helped. She's burning up, Elena said suddenly. Cole touched the baby's forehead and cursed under his breath. She's got a fever. How high? Too high. Elena's heart started racing. What do we do? I need to ride into town. Get the doctor. In this storm? Cole, you can't. I don't have a choice. You'll get killed out there. If I don't go, Clara might die. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Maggie started crying. Clara kept screaming, and Elena felt the walls of the cellar closing in. Let me go, she said. Cole stared at her. What? You stay with the kids. I'll ride for the doctor. You don't even know where town is. So tell me. Elena, no. You can't leave them, Cole. If something happens to you, they have no one. She met his eyes. But if something happens to me, they still have you. That's not... It's the only thing that makes sense, and you know it. Cole's face twisted with anguish. I can't ask you to do that. You're not asking. I'm offering. Maggie grabbed Elena's hand. Don't go. Please don't go. Elena knelt down and cupped the girl's face. I have to, sweetheart. Your sister needs medicine. But you'll die out there. No, I won't. You don't know that. Elena didn't, but she smiled anyway. I'm tougher than I look. Promise you'll come back. Elena hesitated. She'd already made one promise to this girl. She didn't want to make another she couldn't keep, but looking at Maggie's tear-streaked face, she couldn't say no. I promise, she whispered. She stood up and looked at Cole. Where's the doctor? Elena. Where? He told her. The directions were simple enough. Straight road into town, third building on the left. A man named Dr. Harris. He'd know what to do. Cole grabbed her arm before she could leave. Wait. He disappeared up the ladder and came back a moment later with an oilskin coat and a hat. Take these, and take my horse. He's faster and he knows the way. Elena shrugged into the coat. It was too big, but it would keep most of the rain off. Cole pulled her close, his hands on her shoulders. Be careful. I will. If it gets too bad, if you can't see, if the road floods, you turn back. You hear me? I hear you. I mean it, Elena. Don't be a hero. She almost laughed. Little late for that. Then, before she could think better of it, she reached up and kissed his cheek. Just once. Quick and desperate. Take care of them, she said. And then she was climbing the ladder, pushing open the cellar door and stepping into hell. The storm hit her like a fist. Rain so hard it felt like needles, wind that tried to rip the coat right off her back. She couldn't see more than a few feet in any direction, but she could see the barn. She ran for it, slipping in the mud, and hauled open the door. Cole's horse, a big bay gelding named Rusty, stood in his stall, ears pinned back. He didn't like the storm any more than she did. Easy, boy, Elena murmured. We're going for a ride. She saddled him as fast as her shaking hands would allow. When she led him outside, he balked, tossing his head. I know, I don't want to either, but we don't have a choice. She swung into the saddle and urged him forward. For a moment he refused to move. Then a crack of thunder split the sky, and he bolted. Elena held on for her life. The road was a river of mud. Rain poured down so hard she couldn't breathe without choking on it. Lightning lit up the sky in jagged bursts, showing her the world in flashes. Trees bent nearly double, fences torn apart, the whole prairie drowning. Rusty ran hard, his hooves slipping and sliding. Elena leaned low over his neck, trusting him to find the way because she sure as hell couldn't. Time stopped meaning anything. It could have been 10 minutes or an hour. All she knew was the cold, the wet, the burning in her lungs as she fought to stay in the saddle. Then, through the rain, she saw lights, faint and flickering, but there. Town. She urged Rusty faster. He was exhausted, foam flecking his neck, but he gave her everything he had. The buildings loomed out of the darkness. Elena counted them as she passed. 1, 2, 3. She hauled Rusty to a stop and half fell out of the saddle. Her legs barely held her. She stumbled to the door and pounded on it with both fists. "Dr. Harris! I need Dr. Harris!" For a terrible moment, nothing happened. Then the door swung open, and a man with wild gray hair and spectacles squinted out at her. "What in blazes? My baby!" Elena gasped. "She's sick. Fever. High fever. Please, you have to come." "In this storm?" "She's dying. Please." Dr. Harris looked at her like she was insane. Then he sighed and grabbed his coat. "Where?" "Hollow Creek Ranch, about 5 miles out." "I know it. Cole Brennan's place." He grabbed a bag from inside and locked the door behind him. "I'll take my wagon. You can ride with me. Your horse looks half dead." Elena wanted to argue, but he was right. Rusty was swaying on his feet, his sides heaving. "There's a stable 2 doors down," the doctor said. "Get him inside. I'll meet you back here." Elena led Rusty to the stable and got him out of the rain. She rubbed him down as best she could with a handful of straw and made sure he had water. He deserved better, but it was all she could do. When she stumbled back outside, Dr. Harris was waiting with a covered wagon hitched to 2 sturdy mules. "Get in," he said. Elena climbed up beside him. He snapped the reins, and the mules started forward. The trip back was slower. The wagon lurched and slid through the mud, and more than once Elena thought they'd tip over. But Dr. Harris knew what he was doing. He kept the mules steady and his eyes on the road. "How long's the baby been sick?" he asked. "I don't know. She started fussing this afternoon. By evening, she was burning up." "Any other symptoms? Rash? Cough?" "Just the fever." He grunted. "Could be a lot of things. We'll know more when I see her." They rode in silence for a while, then Dr. Harris glanced at her. "You Cole's new wife?" Elena blinked. "What?" "No, I'm helping out." "Helping out." He said it like he didn't quite believe her. "In the middle of a storm that could kill you. The baby needed a doctor. Cole could have come himself." "He couldn't leave the kids alone." Dr. Harris studied her face. "So you came instead?" "Yes. That's either very brave or very stupid." "Probably both." He almost smiled. "I like you." Elena didn't know what to say to that, so she said nothing. When they finally reached the ranch, Cole was standing outside the cellar, drenched and frantic. He ran to the wagon before it even stopped. "Elena!" "I'm fine. I brought the doctor." Dr. Harris climbed down and grabbed his bag. "Where's the baby?" "In the cellar, this way." They hurried down the ladder. Maggie threw herself at Elena the moment she appeared. "You came back!" the girl sobbed. "You came back!" "I told you I would." Dr. Harris went straight to Clara. He examined her quickly, his hands gentle but efficient. Cole hovered nearby, his face pale. After what felt like an eternity, the doctor sat back. "It's croup," he said. "Her airways are swollen. That's why she's so fussy." "Is she going to be okay?" Cole asked. "If we keep the fever down and get some steam in her lungs, yes, but it'll be a rough night." He pulled bottles and packets from his bag. "I need boiling water and towels. We're going to make a steam tent." Elena moved immediately. She climbed out of the cellar and ran to the house, rain still pouring down. She filled a pot with water and got the stove going. While it heated, she gathered every towel she could find. By the time she got back to the cellar, Dr. Harris had rigged up a makeshift tent using blankets hung from the ceiling. He took the steaming pot and set it inside. "Hold her in there," he told Cole. "Let her breathe the steam. It'll help open her airways." Cole sat inside the tent with Clara in his arms. The baby cried weakly, her little chest heaving. Maggie clung to Elena, her face buried in her skirt. "Is Clara going to die?" the girl whispered. "No," Elena said firmly. "The doctor's here now. He's going to make her better." "Are you sure?" "Yes." She wasn't sure, not even close, but Maggie needed to hear it. Dr. Harris mixed a tincture and got a few drops into Clara's mouth. "This will bring the fever down, but we need to watch her through the night. If she gets worse, we may need to take more drastic measures." "What kind of measures?" Cole asked. "Let's hope it doesn't come to that." The hours crawled by. Clara's fever spiked and dropped and spiked again. Every time she coughed, it sounded like she was choking. Maggie fell asleep eventually, curled up on a pile of blankets with her head in Elena's lap. Cole didn't leave the steam tent. He just sat there, holding his daughter, whispering to her. Elena couldn't hear what he was saying, but she saw his lips moving, saw the tears on his face. Dr. Harper in the corner, his bag within reach, and Elena sat in the dim lantern light, stroking Maggie's hair, and tried not to think about what would happen if Clara didn't make it. She'd seen death before. Too many times. She knew how fast it could take someone, how little warning it gave, but this felt different. This felt personal. Somewhere in the last week, these people had stopped being strangers. They'd become something more. They'd become hers. And the thought of losing them, of losing this fragile, broken family she'd stumbled into, was unbearable. She didn't realize she was crying until a tear landed on Maggie's forehead. The girl stirred but didn't wake. Elena wiped her eyes quickly and took a shaky breath. Outside, the storm raged on. Sometime around 3 in the morning, Clara's fever finally broke. Dr. Harris checked her and nodded. She's through the worst of it. The steam helped. And the medicine. Cole slumped forward, his face in his hands. Thank God. Elena didn't correct him. She was just grateful Clara was still breathing. Dr. Harris packed up his bag. She'll need rest and liquids. Keep her warm and dry. If the fever comes back, send for me immediately. Thank you, Cole said hoarsely. I can't. Thank you. Don't thank me. Thank the woman who rode through a typhoon to fetch me. Cole looked at Elena. She looked away. I'll stay until morning, Dr. Harris said. Make sure she stays stable. After that, you're on your own. He settled back into his corner and closed his eyes. Cole carefully laid Clara down on a nest of blankets. The baby whimpered, but didn't wake. He sat there for a moment, just watching her breathe. Then he crossed the cellar to where Elena sat with Maggie, still asleep in her lap. You saved her, he said quietly. The doctor saved her. You brought the doctor. Elena shook her head. Anyone would have done the same. No, they wouldn't. He knelt down in front of her. You could have died out there, Elena. You could have been thrown from the horse, struck by lightning, drowned in a flash flood. And you went anyway. What else was I supposed to do? Run, like you've been doing for 2 years. The words hit hard because they were true. Elena had spent so long running that staying, really staying, felt unnatural, wrong. But tonight, she hadn't run. Tonight, she'd ridden into a storm for a baby who wasn't hers, for a family who wasn't hers, and she'd do it again in a heartbeat. I made a promise to Maggie, she said. I told her I'd come back. And you did. I don't break promises. Not anymore. Cole reached up and touched her face. His hand was rough and warm, and Elena leaned into it without thinking. I don't know what I would have done if I'd lost you, he said. You barely know me. I know enough. Elena's chest ached. Cole, I know you're scared. I know you think you don't deserve this, but you're wrong. His voice was low and fierce. You deserve everything, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving it to you if you'll let me. Elena couldn't breathe, couldn't think. All she could do was stare at him and try to process what he was saying. You don't mean that, she whispered. Yes, I do. You'll change your mind. No, I won't. Wade will never accept me. I don't care. People in town will talk. Let them. I'm broken, Cole. I don't know how to be what you need. You already are. A sob caught in her throat. She wanted to believe him. She wanted it so badly it hurt. But believing meant hoping, and hoping meant risking everything. I can't, she said. Can't what? Can't do this, can't be this, can't... Her voice broke. I'll ruin it. I ruin everything. Cole's hand slid to the back of her neck, pulling her close until their foreheads touched. You didn't ruin tonight, he said. You saved it. That's different. How? Elena didn't have an answer. She just closed her eyes and let herself lean into him, just for a moment, just long enough to remember what it felt like to be held. Then Maggie stirred in her lap, and the moment shattered. Cole pulled back. Elena wiped her eyes, and they sat there in the dim cellar, surrounded by the wreckage of the storm, and pretended nothing had changed. But everything had changed. Elena knew it. Cole knew it. And somewhere outside, Wade Brennan was waiting for them to make a mistake. By dawn, the storm had passed. The sky was clear and blue, like the night before had been a fever dream. But the damage was real. The barn roof had lost half its shingles. The fence around the pasture was flattened. Debris littered the yard, branches, pieces of siding, a wagon wheel from who knows where. Dr. Harris left after breakfast, promising to check on Clara in a few days. Cole paid him with the last of the money he had saved, and the doctor didn't argue. Elena spent the morning cleaning up the worst of the mess while Cole assessed the damage to the ranch. Maggie stayed close, helping where she could, chattering about the storm like it had been an adventure instead of a nightmare. Clara slept peacefully in her basket, her fever gone, her breathing steady. By noon, Wade showed up. Elena saw him coming from a mile away. He rode slowly, deliberately, like he had all the time in the world. Cole met him in the yard. Elena stayed on the porch, Maggie hiding behind her skirts. "Hell of a storm," Wade said. "What do you want?" Cole's voice was flat. "Just checking to see if you survived." "We're fine." Wade dismounted and looked around at the damage. "Doesn't look fine to me." "We'll manage." "Will you?" Wade's eyes flicked to Elena. "Or are you counting on her to fix it?" "Careful, Wade." "I'm just saying, you put a lot of faith in someone you barely know." "I know her well enough." Wade's smile was cold. "Do you? Did she tell you what really happened in Cheyenne?" "She told me everything." "Did she tell you she was sleeping with one of the Harrington sons when she stole the money?" Elena's blood ran cold. Maggie's hand tightened around hers. Cole's jaw clenched. "That's a lie." "Is it?" Wade looked at Elena. "Tell him. Tell him about Thomas Harrington. Tell him how you got that job in the first place." Elena felt like she was going to be sick, because it wasn't entirely a lie. There had been a Thomas Harrington, the oldest son. He'd been kind to her at first, respectful, and then slowly he'd become something else. "I didn't sleep with him," she said quietly. "But he wanted you to," Wade said. "And when you refused, he told his parents you were stealing. That's why they wouldn't pay you. That's why they kicked you out. And you knew," Elena said, her voice shaking, "you knew the truth and you let them destroy me anyway." Wade's expression didn't change. "I had a business to protect. You had a conscience to protect. And you failed." Wade turned back to Cole. "You see? She's poison. She'll turn you against your own family. She'll destroy everything you've built, just like she destroyed everything I had." Cole stared at his brother for a long moment. Then he said, "Get off my land." Wade blinked. "What?" "You heard me. Get off my land and don't come back." "Cole, you had a chance to tell the truth 5 years ago. You chose your reputation over doing what was right, and now you're trying to do the same thing to her again." Cole's voice was steel. "I don't want you here. I don't want you near my family, so leave." Wade's face twisted. "You'll regret this." "Maybe, but it won't be as much as I'd regret listening to you." Wade mounted his horse and looked down at Elena one last time. "You won't last. People like you never do." Then he rode away. Elena stood on the porch, shaking. Maggie was crying quietly, and Cole just stood in the yard, his fists clenched, his shoulders rigid. Finally, he turned and walked back to the house. He stopped in front of Elena. "Is it true? About Thomas Harrington?" "Yes." "Did you refuse him?" "Yes." "And they punished you for it?" "Yes." Cole's jaw worked. "I'm sorry." Elena blinked. "What?" "I'm sorry that happened to you. I'm sorry Wade didn't stand up for you. I'm sorry you've spent 5 years running because no one believed you." He took her hands. "But I believe you, and I'm not letting you go." Elena's vision blurred. "Why?" "Because you're the bravest person I've ever met. Because you saved my daughter's life. Because when I look at you, I see someone worth fighting for." He paused. "And because I think I'm falling in love with you." The words hung in the air, impossible and terrifying and real. Maggie looked up at Elena with wide eyes. "Are you going to kiss him?" Elena laughed, a wet, broken sound. "I don't know." "You should. Mama always said kissing makes everything better." Cole smiled. "Your mama was a smart woman." Elena looked at him, really looked at him, at the exhaustion in his eyes, at the hope, at the man who'd chosen her over his own brother, and she thought maybe, just maybe, she could stay. "I don't know how to do this," she said. "Neither do I," Cole admitted, "but we'll figure it out." "What if I mess it up?" "Then we'll fix it." "What if Wade was right? What if I destroy everything?" Cole pulled her close. You won't. You don't know that. Yes, I do, because you're not running anymore. And he was running still. She was staying, and that was the scariest thing she'd ever done. The days after the storm moved differently, slower, maybe. Or maybe Elena was just paying more attention. She woke every morning before dawn and made coffee in the quiet kitchen while the rest of the house slept. She'd stand at the window and watch the sun come up over the prairie, turning the grass gold, and think about what Cole had said, about falling in love with her, about not letting her go. She didn't know what to do with that. Love wasn't something she understood anymore. She'd thought she understood it once, back before everything fell apart. But that had been a different version of her, a version that still believed people meant what they said. This version knew better, but this version also couldn't stop thinking about the way Cole looked at her, like she was something worth keeping. On the third morning after Wade left, Maggie came downstairs earlier than usual. She climbed into the chair across from Elena and watched her with those serious eyes. "Are you and Papa getting married?" she asked. Elena almost choked on her coffee. "What?" "Mrs. Patterson at the store said you were probably going to get married. She said that's what happens when a woman moves into a man's house. Mrs. Patterson doesn't know what she's talking about." "So you're not?" Elena set her cup down carefully. "Your Papa and I are friends, Maggie. That's all." "But he said he loves you." "You were eavesdropping." "I was right there. You knew I was there." Elena couldn't argue with that. "It's complicated." "Why?" "Because grown-up things usually are." Maggie frowned. "That's a bad answer." "Maybe, but it's the only one I've got." The girl picked at a thread on her nightgown. "Do you love him back?" Elena's chest tightened. "I don't know." "How do you not know?" "Because I don't trust myself to know the difference between love and just being grateful someone wants me around." Maggie tilted her head, thinking. "Mama used to say love is when you'd rather be with someone even when they're annoying. Is Papa annoying?" "Sometimes." "But you still want to be here?" Elena looked at the girl, this fierce, stubborn little girl who'd lost her mother and was still trying to figure out how the world worked. "Yes," Elena said quietly. "I still want to be here." Maggie smiled. It was small and tentative, but it was real. "Then maybe that's love." Before Elena could respond, they heard Clara crying upstairs. Maggie hopped down from the chair and ran to get her, leaving Elena alone with a knot in her chest and too many thoughts. Cole came down a few minutes later with Clara on his hip and Maggie trailing behind. He looked tired but steady, the kind of tired that came from hard work instead of despair. "Morning," he said. "Morning." He poured himself coffee and sat down. Clara reached for Elena immediately, making her demanding baby sounds until Elena took her. "She's gotten attached to you," Cole said. "I've gotten attached to her too. Is that a problem?" Elena kissed the top of Clara's head. "I don't know yet." They ate breakfast in comfortable silence. Maggie chattered about wanting to help mend the fence. Cole said she could hold the nails if she promised not to wander off. Elena cleaned up the dishes and tried not to think about how normal this all felt, how dangerous normal was. After breakfast, Cole went out to start repairs on the barn. Elena took the girls outside to hang laundry. The sun was warm, the wind gentle, and for a few hours everything felt almost peaceful. Then she heard the wagon coming up the road. Elena's stomach dropped. She thought it might be Wade coming back to cause more trouble. But as the wagon got closer, she saw it wasn't Wade at all. It was a woman, middle-aged, well-dressed, with a pinched face and sharp eyes. She pulled the wagon to a stop in front of the house and climbed down like she owned the place. "You must be the girl everyone's talking about," the woman said. Elena set down the laundry basket. "And you are?" "Margaret Patterson. I run the general store in town," the woman Maggie had mentioned. Elena kept her expression neutral. "What can I do for you, Mrs. Patterson?" "I came to see for myself if the rumors were true." Mrs. Patterson looked her up and down. "You don't look like much of a scandal." "I'm not trying to be one." "Well, you're certainly causing one anyway." The woman crossed her arms. "People are talking, saying Cole Brennan took in a woman with a questionable past, saying she's living here without any kind of proper arrangement." Elena's jaw tightened. What Cole does on his own land is his business, not when it affects the whole community. We have standards here, moral standards. "Is that what you call them?" Mrs. Patterson's eyes narrowed. "I'm trying to help you, girl. If you stay here like this, unmarried and unchaperoned, people will assume the worst. And once they assume, there's no taking it back. So what are you suggesting? I'm suggesting you either marry him or leave. Those are your only respectable options. Elena felt her temper rising. With all due respect, Mrs. Patterson, my respectability is not your concern. It is when you're corrupting the morals of Corrupting? Elena's voice went cold. I've been cooking, cleaning, and taking care of 2 children who needed someone. If that's corruption, then I don't know what virtue looks like. Mrs. Patterson's face flushed. You're awfully bold for someone in your position, and you're awfully judgmental for someone who doesn't know the first thing about my position. I know you rode through a storm alone with Cole's horse. I know you spent the night in that cellar with him and the children, and I know what people think when they hear stories like that. Then maybe people should stop thinking the worst of everyone. Maybe you should stop giving them reasons to. Before Elena could respond, Cole appeared from around the barn. He must have heard the raised voices because his expression was dark. Mrs. Patterson, he said, what brings you out here? I came to discuss a private matter with Miss Hartley. If it concerns Elena, it concerns me. So say what you came to say. Mrs. Patterson straightened her spine. Very well. The town is concerned about your living arrangement. It's inappropriate for an unmarried woman to be living under your roof without any kind of chaperone or formal engagement. Is that so? Yes, and I'm here to suggest that Miss Hartley either secure a more appropriate living situation or you make your intentions clear. Cole's jaw worked. My intentions are perfectly clear. Elena is part of this household, and what happens in this household is none of the town's business. Everything that happens in this community is our business. No, it's not. You don't pay my bills, you don't work my land, you don't raise my children. He stepped closer. So with all due respect, Mrs. Patterson, what I do and who I do it with is not up for discussion. Mrs. Patterson's face went red. You're making a mistake, Cole. People won't forget this. Good. Maybe they'll remember to mind their own business next time. The woman turned on her heel and climbed back into her wagon. She snapped the reins harder than necessary, and the horses jolted forward. Elena watched her go, her hands shaking. You didn't have to do that, she said quietly. Yes, I did. Now the whole town will be talking. They were already talking. Cole turned to look at her. Let them talk. I don't care. You should care. Your reputation, my reputation survived my wife dying. It'll survive this too. Elena shook her head. You don't understand. This is different. People can forgive tragedy. They don't forgive scandal. Then maybe I don't want forgiveness from people who think there's something scandalous about a woman helping a man raise his children. That's not what they think is scandalous. I know what they think. Cole's voice softened. And I don't give a damn. Elena looked at him, this stubborn, impossible man who kept choosing her even when it cost him something. Why are you doing this? She asked. Because you deserve better than being run out of town by a bunch of gossips who have nothing better to do than judge people. That's not an answer. Yes, it is. He reached out and took her hand. I told you I was falling in love with you. That wasn't just words, Elena. I meant it, and I'm not going to stand by and let people treat you like you're something shameful. Elena's throat closed up. Cole, I know you're scared. I know you don't trust this, but I'm asking you to try. He squeezed her hand. Stay, not because you have nowhere else to go, but because you want to. I don't know if I can. Why not? Because everyone I've ever stayed for has eventually decided I wasn't worth it. Then they were idiots. Despite everything, Elena almost smiled. You're very sure of yourself. I'm sure of you. You shouldn't be. Too late. They stood there in the yard, hands linked, while Maggie watched from the porch and Clara babbled in the basket of laundry. Finally, Elena pulled her hand away. I need to think. Take all the time you need. But as she walked back to the house, she heard Mrs. Patterson's words echoing in her head. Marry him or leave. Those are your only respectable options. And she realized with a sinking feeling that the woman was probably right. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. She lay in the narrow bed upstairs and stared at the ceiling, her mind racing. Marriage. The word felt like a trap, like something that would lock her in place and take away the one thing she'd fought so hard to keep, the ability to leave when things got bad. But staying without marriage meant scandal, meant people treating Cole like he'd lost his mind and treating her like she was using him. And maybe they were right. Maybe she was using him, not for money or shelter, though those things mattered, but for the feeling of being wanted, of mattering to someone. She heard a soft knock on the door. "Elena?" It was Cole. "You awake?" "Yeah." He opened the door but didn't come in. Just stood in the doorway, silhouetted by the dim light from downstairs. "Can't sleep either?" he asked. "No." "Mind if I come in?" Elena sat up and pulled the blanket around her shoulders. "It's your house." He came in and sat on the edge of the bed, careful to keep distance between them. For a while, neither of them spoke. "I've been thinking," Cole said finally. "About what Mrs. Patterson said." Elena's stomach twisted. And she's not entirely wrong. People are going to talk, and it's going to get worse before it gets better. "I know. So I have a solution." He turned to look at her. "Marry me." Elena's breath caught. "What?" "Marry me. Not because you have to, not because the town expects it, but because I want you here, and because this way no one can say a damn thing about it." "Cole, that's crazy." "Probably. But so is everything else we've done." He reached for her hand. "I know it's fast, I know you're scared, but I also know that you care about my girls, and I think you care about me too, even if you won't admit it." Elena's heart was pounding. "You don't know what you're asking." "Yes, I do. I'm asking you to take a chance. On me. On us. On the life we could build together." "What if I can't be what you need? You already are. What if I run? Then I'll come after you. What if—" He pressed a finger to her lips. "Stop. Stop finding reasons it won't work and just tell me what you want." Elena closed her eyes. What did she want? She wanted to stop running. She wanted to wake up in this house every morning and not wonder if it would be her last day here. She wanted Maggie to stop looking at her like she might disappear. She wanted Clara to grow up knowing she'd always been wanted. And she wanted Cole. She wanted his steady presence and his stubborn loyalty and the way he looked at her like she was something precious. But wanting and deserving were two different things. "I'm broken," she whispered. "So am I. I don't know how to be a wife. I barely know how to be a husband anymore. We'll figure it out together." "I'll disappoint you." "Not possible." Elena opened her eyes and looked at him. "You're really sure about this?" "More sure than I've been about anything since Sarah died." "Even though your brother hates me? Even though the town thinks I'm a scandal?" "Especially because of that." He smiled. "I'm tired of letting other people decide what my life should look like. I want to decide, and I choose you." Elena felt something crack open in her chest, something that had been closed for so long she'd forgotten it was there. Hope. Dangerous, terrifying, impossible hope. "Okay," she said. Cole blinked. "Okay? Okay. I'll marry you." He stared at her like he couldn't quite believe what he'd heard. Then he pulled her into his arms and held her so tight she could barely breathe. "Thank you," he whispered into her hair. "Thank you." Elena held on to him and tried not to cry. She failed. They were married 3 days later by the traveling minister who came through once a month. It wasn't fancy. No white dress or flowers or guests. Just Cole in his cleanest shirt, Elena in a borrowed dress that was too big, Maggie holding Clara, and the minister reading from a worn Bible. When it was over, the minister shook their hands and said, "May your union be blessed with many years of happiness." Elena didn't know about happiness, but standing there with Cole's ring on her finger, a simple gold band that had belonged to his mother, she thought maybe, just maybe, they had a chance. The town, predictably, had opinions. Mrs. Patterson told anyone who would listen that it was a rushed wedding and therefore suspect. The men at the saloon made jokes about Cole getting himself a pretty young thing to warm his bed. The women at the church whispered about how Elena had trapped him. Cole ignored all of it. He went about his business, fixed the ranch, and introduced Elena as his wife with a pride that made her chest ache. Maggie was thrilled. She told everyone at school that she had a new mama, and when one of the other children said Elena wasn't her real mama, Maggie punched him in the nose. Elena had to have a long talk with her about why hitting people was wrong, but secretly she was touched. Clara didn't care about any of it. She just wanted to be fed and held and occasionally allowed to grab Elena's hair with her sticky little fists. For the first few weeks, everything was almost normal. They fell into routines. Elena cooked and cleaned and took care of the children. Cole worked the ranch and came home exhausted but satisfied. They ate dinner together every night, and Maggie would chatter about her day while Clara banged her spoon on the table. At night, Cole would kiss Elena's forehead and say goodnight, and they'd go to their separate rooms like the marriage was only on paper, which, in a way, it was. Elena had agreed to marry him. She hadn't agreed to everything that usually came with marriage. And Cole, to his credit, never pushed, never asked for more than she was willing to give. He just waited. But waiting had its own kind of wait. One night, about a month after the wedding, Elena was washing dishes when Cole came up behind her. He didn't touch her, just stood close enough that she could feel his warmth. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Yes." "Are you happy?" Elena's hand stilled in the water. "Why are you asking?" "Because sometimes I look at you and you seem happy, and sometimes I look at you and you seem 1,000 miles away." She pulled her hands out of the water and dried them on her apron. "I'm still figuring out how to be here." "What does that mean?" "It means I spent so long moving that standing still feels strange." Cole turned her around to face him. "Do you regret marrying me?" "No." "Do you regret staying?" "No." "Then what's wrong?" Elena looked down at her hands. "I keep waiting for something to go wrong. For you to realize you made a mistake. For Wade to come back and ruin everything. For the town to finally decide we're not worth the trouble. None of that is going to happen. You don't know that. I know Wade hasn't been back in a month. I know the town is already moving on to the next scandal. And I know I didn't make a mistake." He tilted her chin up so she had to meet his eyes. "But I also know I can't convince you of any of that. You have to decide to believe it yourself." Elena's throat tightened. "I'm trying." "I know you are, and that's enough for me." He kissed her forehead and left her alone in the kitchen. And Elena stood there with her hands still damp and her heart aching, wondering when she'd started caring so much about disappointing him. The turning point came in late summer. Elena was in town picking up supplies when she saw Wade. He was standing outside the saloon talking to a group of men. When he saw her, his expression went cold. She tried to walk past without acknowledging him, but he stepped into her path. "Mrs. Brennan," he said. The way he said it made her name sound like an insult. "Wade, I hear congratulations are in order. If you're here to cause trouble, I'm not here to cause anything. I'm just observing." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Observing how quickly my brother replaced his wife. Observing how easily you wormed your way into his life. Observing how people will do anything for security, even marry someone they don't love." Elena's hands clenched around the basket she was carrying. "You don't know anything about what I feel." "Don't I?" "I know you, Elena. I know how you operate. You find someone desperate enough to take you in, and you make yourself indispensable. And when they finally see through you, you move on to the next one." "That's not what happened." "Isn't it?" Wade leaned in close. "You didn't love Cole when you married him. You still don't. You just needed a place to hide, and he was stupid enough to give it to you." "That's not true." "Then prove it. Tell me you love him." Elena opened her mouth, closed it. The words stuck in her throat. Wade's smile widened. "That's what I thought." He walked away, leaving Elena standing in the street with her heart pounding and her eyes burning. Because he was right. She'd married Cole for safety, for security, for a place to belong. But love? She didn't know if she knew how to love anyone anymore. She finished her shopping in a daze and rode home with Wade's words echoing in her head. When she got back to the ranch, Cole was in the barn working on a broken saddle. "How was town?" he asked. "Fine." He looked up, frowning. "You sure? You look upset." "I'm fine." "Elena." "I said I'm fine." She walked past him before he could ask any more questions, but she felt his eyes on her back, worried and confused. That night she lay in bed and stared at the ceiling, trying to figure out what was wrong with her. She had everything she'd wanted, a home, a family, a man who cared about her. So why did it feel like she was still running? The answer came to her slowly, painfully, because she'd never stopped protecting herself. She'd married Cole, but she'd kept part of herself locked away. The part that could get hurt. The part that could care too much and lose everything. She'd given him her presence, her work, her time, but she'd never given him her heart. and Wade knew it. He'd seen right through her. The question was, did Cole? She got her answer the next morning. Cole came downstairs while Elena was making. He poured himself coffee and sat at the table, but he didn't drink it. Just stared at the cup. "We need to talk," he said. Elena's stomach dropped. "About what?" "About whatever's been bothering you since yesterday. I told you I'm fine. And I'm telling you, you're not." He looked at her. "What happened in town?" Elena turned back to the stove. "I saw Wade." "Did he say something to you?" "He said a lot of things." "Like what?" Elena took a breath. "He said I don't love you, that I only married you for security." Cole was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Is he right?" Elena's hand stilled on the pan. "I don't know." "You don't know if you love me, or you don't know if you only married me for security?" "Both." She heard his chair scrape against the floor, heard him walk over to her. He turned her around gently, his hands on her shoulders. "Tell me the truth," he said. "Why did you marry me?" Elena forced herself to meet his eyes. "Because I was tired of running. Because you offered me something I hadn't had in years. Because I wanted to stay." "That's not the same as love." "I know." His jaw tightened. "Do you think you could ever love me?" Elena's throat closed up. She wanted to say yes. She wanted to give him that much, but she'd spent too long lying to herself. She couldn't lie to him too. "I don't know," she whispered. "I don't know if I'm capable of it anymore." Cole's hands dropped from her shoulders. He took a step back, and the distance between them felt like a canyon. "I see," he said quietly. "Cole? No, it's fine. I knew what I was getting into. I just thought—" He stopped himself. "Never mind what I thought." He walked out of the kitchen. Elena heard the front door close, heard his footsteps cross the yard. And she stood there in the kitchen with tears running down her face, wondering how she'd managed to ruin the one good thing she'd found. Maggie found her first. Elena was still standing at the stove, tears streaming down her face, when the girl came into the kitchen. "Why are you crying?" Maggie asked. Elena wiped her eyes quickly. "I'm not." "Yes, you are. I can see you." "It's nothing, sweetheart, just—" "Did you and Papa have a fight?" Elena's hands trembled as she turned off the stove. "We had a conversation. That's what grown-ups call fights." Maggie climbed into her usual chair. "Mama and Papa used to have conversations too. Then they'd be quiet for a day, and then everything would be fine again." "This is different." "Why?" "Because I hurt him," Elena wanted to say. "Because I told him, I don't know if I can love him, and now he's out there thinking he made a mistake." But she couldn't explain that to a 6-year-old. "Because grown-ups are complicated," she said instead. Maggie swung her legs under the chair. "Are you going to leave?" "What? No." "Promise?" Elena looked at the girl, this fierce little girl who'd already been abandoned by death and disappointment. "I promise." "Then it'll be fine. Papa always says, if you don't leave, you can fix anything." Elena's chest ached. She pulled Maggie into a hug and held on tight. "When did you get so smart?" "I was born this way." Despite everything, Elena laughed. It came out wet and broken, but it was real. Cole didn't come back to the house for lunch. Elena fed the girls and tried not to watch the door. She cleaned up the kitchen and tried not to imagine him out there deciding this whole thing had been a mistake. By mid-afternoon, she couldn't stand it anymore. She left Maggie watching Clara and walked out to find him. He was in the far pasture, mending fence, his back to her, his movements sharp and angry. "Cole," she called. He didn't turn around, just kept working. Elena walked closer. "Cole, please, can we talk?" "I thought we already did." "I didn't explain it right." "You explained it fine." "You don't love me. You don't know if you can. Message received." Elena flinched. "That's not... It's more complicated than that." "Is it?" He finally turned to face her. His eyes were hard. "Because from where I'm standing, it seems pretty simple. I asked you a question. You answered it. Now we both know where we stand." "You're angry." "I'm hurt." The admission seemed to cost him something. "I knew this was a risk when I asked you to marry me. I knew you were scared. I knew you didn't trust easily. But I thought—" He stopped himself. "I thought maybe if I gave you time, if I was patient, you'd eventually feel the same way I do." "I'm trying." "Are you?" Because it seems like you're still waiting for an excuse to run. That's not fair, isn't it? Cole threw down the hammer he'd been holding. Every time something good happens, you find a way to sabotage it. Every time I get close, you pull away. Every time I tell you I love you, you act like I've said something wrong. Because I don't know how to handle it when people say things like that. Why not? Because everyone who's ever said they loved me has left. The words burst out of her, raw and furious. My parents left. The families I worked for left. Wade, your brother who claims he cared about me. He left the moment it became inconvenient to stand up for me. So forgive me if I don't know how to believe you when you say you love me. Forgive me if I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. Cole stared at her. Some of the anger drained from his face. I'm not them. I know that. In my head, I know that. But knowing something and believing it are two different things. So what are you saying? That you're never going to trust me? I'm saying I'm trying, but I don't know how to get past this wall I've built. And I don't know if telling you I love you would even mean anything when I'm still so scared. Cole was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, What are you scared of, specifically? Elena wrapped her arms around herself. I'm scared that if I let myself love you, really love you, you'll see who I actually am and decide I'm not worth it. I'm scared that this life we're building will fall apart and I'll be right back where I started. I'm scared that Maggie will lose another person she cares about. I'm scared that I'll fail Clara. I'm scared. Her voice broke. I'm scared that I'm too broken to ever be whole again. Cole closed the distance between them. He took her face in his hands, forcing her to look at him. You are not broken, he said. You're hurt. There's a difference. How? Because broken things can't heal, but hurt things can. It takes time, it takes work. But they can. Elena's eyes burned. What if I can't? Then we'll deal with that when it happens. But I'm not giving up on you just because you're scared. You should. You deserve someone who can give you everything without hesitation. I don't want someone else. I want you. Scared, scarred, hesitant, all of it. His thumbs brushed away her tears. And I'll wait as long as it takes for you to believe that. That's not fair to you. Let me worry about what's fair to me. Elena leaned into his touch, her chest so tight she could barely breathe. I do care about you. I need you to know that. I know. And I'm grateful. I don't want your gratitude, Elena. I want your trust. I'm working on it. Then that's enough for now. He kissed her forehead and pulled her into his arms. Elena held on to him and tried to believe that maybe, just maybe, he meant what he said. They stood there in the pasture until the sun started to sink toward the horizon. Then they walked back to the house together, not quite fixed, but not quite broken either. The next few weeks were hard. Not because they fought, they didn't, but because everything felt fragile, like one wrong word could shatter what they'd built. Cole gave her space. He stopped saying he loved her, stopped pushing for more than she could give. He was kind and patient and steady, and it made Elena feel worse instead of better, because she could see what it cost him. The way his smile didn't quite reach his eyes anymore, the way he hesitated before touching her, like he wasn't sure he was allowed, and she hated that she'd done that to him. One night, after the girls were asleep, Elena found him on the porch. He was sitting in the dark, staring out at nothing. She sat down beside him. I'm sorry. For what? For hurting you, for not being what you need. Cole sighed. You're doing it again. Doing what? Deciding what I need instead of asking me. Elena frowned. What do you mean? You keep saying you're not what I need, but you never ask me what I actually need. He turned to look at her. Do you want to know? Yes. I need someone who shows up, who doesn't run when things get hard, who cares about my kids and helps me fix this broken-down ranch. He paused. You do all of that, every single day. So when you say you're not what I need, it makes me think you don't see yourself at all. Elena's throat tightened. I see a woman who's terrified of failing you. And I see a woman who rode through a storm to save my daughter, who stood up to my brother when he tried to run her off, who married me even though she was scared. Cole reached for her hand. You're the bravest person I know, Elena. The only person who doesn't see that is you. Elena looked down at their joined hands. I don't feel brave. Brave people never do. They sat in silence for a while. Then Elena said, "Tell me about Sarah." Cole's grip tightened slightly. "Why?" "Because I need to know who I'm living up to." "You're not living up to anyone. You're just you." "Cole, Sarah was a good woman, a good wife, a good mother." His voice was careful. "But she's gone. And I loved her. I'll always love her. But that doesn't mean there's no room in my life for anyone else." "How can you be sure?" "Because when I look at you, I don't see Sarah. I see Elena. And that's who I want." Elena's eyes burned. "Even though I'm a mess?" "Especially because you're a mess. Perfect people are boring." Despite everything, Elena smiled. "You're ridiculous. And you're beautiful when you smile." She looked at him, this stubborn man who refused to give up on her, and felt something shift inside her chest. Something that had been locked up for so long she'd forgotten it existed. "I think I might be falling in love with you," she whispered. Cole went very still. "What?" I'm not sure, but I think maybe I'm starting to feel." She stopped, frustrated. "I don't know how to say this." "You're doing fine." "I'm terrified." "I know, but I look at you and I don't want to leave. I look at Maggie and Clara, and I can't imagine not being here. And when you told me you loved me, it scared me because I didn't think I deserved it. But now," she took a shaky breath, "now I'm starting to think maybe I do. Maybe we both do." Cole pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. "Say it again." "Which part?" "The part where you think you're falling in love with me." Elena's heart pounded. "I think I'm falling in love with you." "You're sure?" "No, but I want to try." Cole kissed her, not desperate or demanding, just soft and sure and full of something Elena was starting to recognize as hope. When they pulled apart, he was smiling, really smiling. "That's enough for me," he said. Things didn't magically get better after that. Elena still had days where the fear crept back in, still had moments where she wondered if she was fooling herself. But Cole was patient, and Maggie was persistent. And Clara just kept growing, oblivious to all the complicated adult feelings swirling around her. And slowly, so slowly Elena almost didn't notice, the ranch started to feel less like a refuge and more like a home. The turning point came 3 months later, on a cold November afternoon. Wade showed up unannounced. Elena saw him coming from the kitchen window. Her first instinct was to hide. Her second was to grab something heavy. Instead, she walked outside to meet him. Cole was already there, his stance defensive. "What do you want, Wade?" Wade dismounted slowly. He looked older somehow, tired. "I came to apologize," he said. Cole's eyebrows shot up. "You what?" "I came to apologize, to both of you." Wade looked at Elena. "I was wrong. About you. About all of it." Elena crossed her arms. "What changed your mind?" "I ran into Thomas Harrington in Cheyenne last month. We got to talking. He'd had a few drinks, and he started bragging about how he'd gotten rid of a girl who'd refused him." Wade's jaw tightened. "He described what he did to you, how he lied to his parents, how he made sure you'd never work in a decent house again. And I realized I'd helped him do it." Elena's breath caught. "I knew," Wade continued. "Deep down, I knew you were telling the truth, but I was too much of a coward to admit it. I chose my business over doing what was right, and I've regretted it every day since." "Then why did you keep coming after her?" Cole demanded. "Because I was ashamed and angry at myself, and it was easier to blame her than to admit I'd failed her." Wade looked at Elena. "I'm sorry for everything. You deserved better, and I hope someday you can forgive me." Elena stared at him. Part of her wanted to tell him to leave, to say his apology was 5 years too late. But another part, the part that was learning to let go of old hurts, saw a man who was genuinely sorry, who'd carried his own guilt for years. "I forgive you," she said quietly. Wade's eyes widened. "You do?" "I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because I'm tired of carrying anger around like armor." Cole reached for her hand. She took it. Wade nodded slowly. "Thank you. That's more than I had any right to ask for." He looked at his brother. "I'm sorry to you too, Cole, for trying to come between you and the woman you love, for putting my pride ahead of your happiness." Cole's expression softened slightly. You're still an idiot. I know. But you're my brother. Wade smiled, small and sad. Does that mean I can visit sometime? If you behave yourself. I'll do my best. Wade mounted his horse and tipped his hat. Take care of her, Cole. I plan to. After Wade rode away, Elena and Cole stood in the yard, hands still linked. You didn't have to forgive him, Cole said. I know, but holding on to anger wasn't helping anyone, least of all me. Cole pulled her close. You're extraordinary, you know that? I'm learning. They walked back to the house together. And for the first time since Elena had arrived at Hollow Creek Ranch, she felt like she truly belonged. The years that followed weren't perfect. There were hard seasons and lean winters. There were arguments and misunderstandings and days when Elena still felt the old fear trying to creep back in. But there were also mornings where she woke up beside Cole and felt nothing but gratitude. There were afternoons watching Maggie teach Clara how to braid wildflowers. There were evenings on the porch, the four of them together, watching the sun set over the prairie. Wade visited occasionally. He never stayed long, but he always brought gifts for the girls and treated Elena with a respect that felt hard-won and genuine. The town eventually stopped gossiping. They had new scandals to occupy themselves with. And when people saw Elena and Cole together, saw the way they worked side by side, the way they raised those girls, most of them had to admit it seemed like a good match. Mrs. Patterson never quite came around, but Elena stopped caring what she thought. On their 5th anniversary, Cole took Elena to the same spot in the pasture where they'd had their first real fight, where she'd told him she didn't know if she could love him. Remember this place? He asked. Unfortunately, he smiled. This is where you told me you were too broken to be fixed. I was wrong about that. I know, but I wanted to bring you back here, to remind you how far you've come. Elena looked around at the ranch, at the fences they'd mended together, the barn they'd rebuilt, the fields that were finally producing again. We've come pretty far, haven't we? We have, and I'm proud of us. Cole pulled her close. But I'm especially proud of you. Why? Because you stayed. When every instinct told you to run, you stayed, and that took more courage than anything else. Elena thought about that. About the woman she'd been when she first stumbled onto this ranch, desperate, exhausted, convinced she'd never belong anywhere. And she thought about who she was now. A wife. A mother to 2 girls who weren't hers by blood, but were hers in every way that mattered. A woman who'd learned that staying was harder than running, and infinitely more rewarding. You want to know something? She said. Always. I used to think survival meant keeping moving, never staying in one place long enough to get hurt. But I was wrong. She looked up at him. Real survival, real living, is finding something worth staying for, and then having the courage to stay, even when it's terrifying. Cole kissed her. And are you terrified? Every day. Good. That means you're still brave. They stood there in the pasture as the sun dipped low and painted the sky gold and pink. In the distance, Elena could hear Maggie calling the chickens in for the night and Clara's delighted laughter. This was her life now. Not perfect, not easy, but hers. And standing there with Cole's arms around her and her family waiting at home, Elena finally understood something she'd spent years running from. Love wasn't about being whole. It was about being willing to be broken and trusting someone else to help pick up the pieces. It was about showing up every day, even when you were scared. It was about choosing to stay when leaving would have been easier, and she'd chosen to stay. Not because she had nowhere else to go. Not because she was trapped or desperate or out of options, but because this place, this broken-down ranch on the edge of nowhere, had become the first real home she'd ever known. And these people, Cole with his quiet strength, Maggie with her fierce heart, Clara with her fearless joy, had become her family. Worth staying for, worth fighting for, worth every moment of terror and doubt and hard-won hope. Come on, Cole said, taking her hand. Let's go home. Elena smiled. Yeah, let's go home. They walked back to the house together as the stars began to appear overhead. And Elena thought about all the miles she'd traveled, all the places she'd run from, all the versions of herself she'd left behind. She'd spent so long believing that staying in one place would destroy her, that putting down roots would only mean more pain when they were inevitably torn up. But she'd been wrong. Because the greatest act of survival wasn't crossing deserts or enduring storms or running until your feet bled. It was finding the one who could finally rest. It was daring to stay when every instinct screamed at you to go. It was learning that home wasn't a place you stumbled into by accident. It was something you built brick by brick, choice by choice, day by day. And on that unforgiving Wyoming frontier, where the wind carved and the storms raged and survival was never guaranteed, Elena had finally learned the hardest lesson of all. Staying changed everything.